next reader hails from New Roads, Louisiana. Where the hell is that, Andre? Is that really, did you make that up? No, I'm just Where is that? Near Baton Rouge, okay. I thought you were closer by then. This makes me sad too that here's another senior. English major or creative writing major? English, alright. Says he spends some of his free time writing poetry. Mr. Andre St. Romain.
Thank you. Tonight I'll be reading two poems that I wrote for my poetry class that I have with Dr. Udall. So a few people in here have probably already heard them, and I apologize for that. The first poem I'm going to read is called Les Artistes sont toujours ici, which means the artists are still here. His name is Francois. He was born in 1925 in a metal tub in the kitchen of his family's house, avec sa grand-mère, with his grandmother as a midwife. He's quiet most of the time, but if you get him talking, if you ask him a few questions, if you express even the slightest interest, he'll tell you some stories. He'll tell you about the time one of the dictatorial school nuns spanked his hand with the ruler so hard that she broke 2 or 3 of his metacarpals. His only offense? Speaking his native tongue in school. A fascist state had forbidden French, the langue sacrée, the language of his heart, and he didn't learn English until he was 8. He'll tell you about the time in 1933 that his family went all the way to Homa for a Coca-Cola to soothe his little brother's stomach ache, which later turned out to be appendicitis, an ache that neither the doctor nor the cola could soothe. He'll tell you about his time in the service, how at 17 years of age he was shipped halfway across the world, to islands whose names he's forgotten, and there he caught malaria from the mosquitoes and the clap from 14-year-old prostitutes, and was stunned to hear his language spoken in the streets. He'll tell you about the time he saw Nicholls, son meilleur ami, his best friend, get his head taken off by a mortar round. Francois had convinced T to sign up. If you speak to him, he'll answer in English, and his stories will be in English. But when he sings, it's always in French. He'll be reluctant at first. He'll say he hasn't played in years, but of course he really wants to. He really wants you to insist, to reassure himself that you actually want to hear him. And after a little persuasion, he'll pull his squeeze box out of some dusty corner, and with his voice in his fingers, he'll send you back 100 years in time. He'll claim to be rusty, but the notes he'll play will flow forth effortlessly, automatically, as easy as speech, the product of a lifetime immersed in this music, still strong despite the arthritis that curls his hands into withered hooks. Je peux faire mes mots tout seul, he'll sing, and you'll realize it's true, that he can still do it even now, but all alone. And you realize too that you don't have to work in a studio to be an artist. You realize that there are artists all around, down the street, across the bayou, right next door. The fiddlers, the boat builders, the basket weavers, the chair caners, the broom makers, the hunched old men and women you see shuffling through the local houses, but with whom you've never bothered to speak, who carry on the art forms of 100 centuries ago. The old people you see sitting on their front porches, just waiting for somebody's care. Thank y'all. This poem, I haven't named it yet, but I guess I'll call it Dragon. On April 25th, 2007, a dragon visited the small town of New Streets, Louisiana. He appeared in the skies around noon and quickly drew large crowds into the square in front of the courthouse. After circling the town for 45 minutes or so, he descended onto the spire of the courthouse, managing to not damage a single shingle or the antique clock on the courthouse's east face. After winding himself around the courthouse tower and resting there for about 15 minutes, he descended to the courthouse square. The assembled crowd panicked at first, but after the dragon failed to demonstrate any dangerous sentiments, one brave or foolish individual slowly approached him. The dragon allowed the man to pet his nose, after which the entire crowd, gradually gathered around the dragon, who permitted the townsfolk to scratch him behind the ears and rub his scaly belly. Someone approached the dragon and offered him some store-bought meat, which he gratefully and gently ate from the individual's hand, after lightly charring it with his breath. After some children began climbing on the dragon's back, he suddenly flew into the sky, giving the initially frightened but exhilarated children the roller coaster ride of their lives, before depositing them safely back in the courthouse square. The dragon posed for photos with the mayor and numerous other officials, visited several historic sites in the town, and allowed himself to be interviewed by the town newspaper, before finally saying goodbye to the crowds and flying off to wherever his home might be. The newspapers of South Louisiana talked of nothing else for 3 weeks, and several individuals involved with the dragon's visit became minor celebrities, largely thanks to the internet. The whole series of events came to be called the New Street's Dragon Incident, and all in all it was, without a doubt, the most extraordinary event in the small town's history. Of course, that didn't actually happen. What did happen on April 25th, 2007, was that a friend of mine died in a car accident at the age of 17. And until I found out about it the next morning, I would have thought that such an event was about as likely as the thing about the dragon.